So we've diverted from regular damages to the damages, we should call these aggravated damages that some kinds of thieves pay. So generally speaking, if you're a thief, or actually even if you're negligent as a custodian, then you'll only pay aggravated damages of twice the value of the object that was lost. But for certain kinds of egregious theft, which the Torah describes as stealing a cattle or sheep and then selling it or slaughtering it. Somehow, maybe because you're destroying the evidence, this is seen as more egregious. In these situations, you actually pay aggravated damages of 4 or 5 times. And the Mishnah is just musing on what you have to do in order to pass that boundary of 4 or 5 times. In other words, what do you need to do in order to become liable to 4 or 5 times damages? And from that meditation, the Mishnah is then going to pass laterally into other legal questions related to damages. But let's pick up in the Mishnah. He sold it other than 100th part. In other words, he sold 99% of this animal, but he retained a 1% share. And remember that the Torah says you're liable for these aggravated damages if you steal it and sell it. So in this case, he's kept a small share. Or shehaitalov or shutafot. Maybe he had a share in it. Or hashochet v'nitab lav yado. Maybe he slaughtered it, but it became unkosher when he slaughtered it. Maybe he didn't slaughter it quite correctly. So it is slaughtered, but it's not slaughtered in a way that makes it edible. You would say perhaps not in the normal way. Hanucher, he actually pierced it in the windpipe. It's another way of killing an animal, but it's not kosher. Vehamaker, he actually rooted out its gullet. You can kill an animal that way, but it's not kosher. In all of these cases, Mishalem tashlum chefal, he makes twofold restitution, i.e., he pays twice. So he pays the normal theft aggravated damages, but he hasn't passed the bar for 4 or 5 times damages. He doesn't pay 4 times or 5 times. In order to pay 4 times or 5 times, you have to really sell it completely. You have to slaughter it in a way that makes it kosher. And we'll see, you have to take possession of it. Now, in traditional financial transactions, if you pay for an animal, you take ownership of it when you lift it up or when you take it into your own domain, when you lead it away. So let's see what happens. Now, regular laws of ownership don't apply to theft, but we are going to apply those in an analogous way to the actions of a thief. Ganav birshut ha'ba'alim. So he stole it in the owner's domain, but he slaughtered it or he sold it outside their domain. So he must have taken it out. Or maybe he stole it outside their domain. So maybe this animal is out in the public space and he's led it away and he's brought it back in their domain and slaughtered it. Or maybe he stole it and slaughtered it or sold it outside their domain. So he's found it in public space somewhere. He's taken it away and he slaughtered it. So in all these cases, he's actually taken possession of the animal. And so he's going to pay 4 or 5 times. Mishalem tashlumei arba'ah v'chamisha. He's going to make 4 times or 5 times restitution. But there's always a but at the end of the Mishnah. Aval, im ganavet tavach umachar birshutam. If he stole it and slaughtered it or sold it within their domain. I suppose we need to visualize a pretty large domain now. I don't think he's going to do this in their backyard, but maybe they own some kind of a ranch. He's wandered off onto this ranch and he's taken this animal and he slaughtered it or he sold it. In this case, the Mishnah rules, Patur, he's exempt because he's done this whole action he's done this action on the ranch, on their ranch, and he hasn't legally taken possession of the animal. So he's still liable for double penalties, but not for 4 or 5 times. And similarly, if he's in the process of taking it off their domain, so let's say he's dragging it off the ranch, he was dragging it out to take it off the ranch. He's dragging it out. It died actually in the owner's domain. He's exempt. And by the way, most commentators, we seem to have segued here slightly from liable for 4 or 5 times to liable for twice. Most people would say, and most commentators would say at this point, he's actually not even liable for double damages because the animal has somehow died on the original property. He'd be hot, or shehotzi or chutz mereshut hapalim umeit chayav. If he lifted it, one of the ways you take possession of a small animal in legal terms is by lifting it up. So if he lifted it up or he took it out of the owner's domain and it died, at that point he's liable. He'd be hot, or shehotzi or chutz mereshut hapalim umeit chayav. What if he gave it away in some other way? So he gave it as the firstborn. I've translated this as firstborn dues following Kahati. This is the redemption. So when you redeem your firstborn, you give some money. Well, now we give some money to a Kohen, but then you could give anything. So you might give an animal. For example, you can give an animal to redeem another firstborn. He gave the animal to redeem his firstborn son. Leval chovo, he gave it to his creditor. L'shomer chinam, he gave it to an unpaid guardian to be kept. These are all now we're going to go through the list of 4 classic custodian categories. Villa shoel, he gave it to someone who wanted to borrow it. L'noses sachar, he gave it to a paid guardian. Villa socher, he gave it to someone who rented it. And one of these people pulled it along, and it was just taking it off the ranch. Umeit birshut haba'alim, and it died in the owner's domain. So this is no longer the situation where he's dragging it off the owner's domain, but he's passed it on to someone else who's dragging it off the owner's domain. Generally, by the way, there's no agency for crime. So one of these people, the paid guardian, the unpaid guardian, the borrower, the hirer, these are not proper agents. But we're considering them as if they could be for the purposes of damages. But this animal dies on the ranch, and he's exempt, patur. However, he'd be hot, or if they had lifted up, and now we're talking about someone in these categories, if they'd lifted it up, if they'd taken possession of it, or if they took it off the ranch, or if they took it off the ranch, at that point, and at that point it dies, at that point they are liable, either for double or for 4 times damages.